All right, welcome back. So today we are going to wrap up learning objective number 4, describe the 3 steps of cellular respiration. So go ahead, find a new blank page. Let me get one here, and I am going to, there we go, use orange, because orange is fire. Cellular respiration is fire. I love it. And write down cellular respiration totals. Respiration totals. All right, sweet. So we're going to look at glycolysis and Krebs, and I'm going to color coordinate glycolysis. All right, glycolysis, and then leave a little bit of space. Let me turn that down. Sorry about that. And then Krebs. Krebs. Perfect. So what I'd like you to do is to go back to our glycolysis. Go back in your notebook to where we talked about glycolysis. And add up all of the energy-carrying molecules that we made in glycolysis. So pause the video, do that, and then write it down on the next page, on the page that you were just at. Okay? Perfect. All right. So here you go. So glycolysis, right? We spent 2 ATP, so we minus 2 ATP to get it started, right? And we gained 4 ATP. And then in that same step where we gained 4 ATP, we also gained 2 NADH, 2 full baskets, right? So for those of you that didn't get that, let me show you very quickly where that came from. So we spent 2 ATP right here, right? We spent 2 full batteries, and then we get 4 ATP here, and we get 2 NADH here. Okay, so now go ahead and do the same thing for the Krebs cycle. All right, now you have to remember, how many pyruvate do we produce in glycolysis? We produce 2. So how many times does the cycle go around for every 1 glucose that goes in? Twice, right? So every number that you have to make sure that you double it. So Krebs, it's going to make 2 ATP. I know that we just listed 1 on the cycle, but remember, it goes around twice. And so that's a plus, that's a gainer, right? And we're going to have 8 plus 8 NADH, 8 full baskets, NADH, plus, special to Krebs, we have 2 FADH2, just like that. Perfect. So now we have ATP, right? So that's our goal. So let me go back, let me get some orange. Here we go. So now we're going to add all of these up, right? So ATP, that's perfect. That's what we want. That's our whole entire goal. Remember the life equation? The energy that's part of the product, that's ATP. That's what we need. So we spent 2 ATP to get this whole thing started. We gained 4, so that's a net of 2 ATP in glycolysis, and then plus the 2 ATP in Krebs. So that is a total of 4 ATP right there. And then we're going to total this up. So that's 10 NADH, and then of course 2 plus 0 is 2 FADH2. All right, so now what if I told you that these full baskets right here, they go to the electron transport chain, and what if I told you that 1 NADH makes approximately 3 ATP, and if every 1 FADH2 makes approximately 2 ATP. Could you do the math and could you figure out how much ATP we make for 1 glucose? So go ahead and pause it and do that. All right, so hopefully you did 3 times 10. So just using the NADH, that's 30 ATP, right? And then 2 times 2, so that would be 4 ATP. So then if we add up all of our ATPs, 4 plus 30 plus 4, so we get a grand total of 38 ATPs per 1 molecule of glucose, right? And that's it. So that's what you're going to see, 36 to 38. The reason why they say 36 is because, remember, glycolysis happens outside of the mitochondria in the cytoplasm, and so we need 2 ATP to do active transport to get the pyruvate into the mitochondria. So standardized testing, if they ask you how many ATP are produced per glucose, right, it's going to be anywhere from 36 to 38 ATP. So that's ACT, SAT, AP Biology, different standardized tests. However, when I went to Whitworth, my biochem professor made a big deal about this. He says, actually, that's not what the research that's been around for like 20 years tells us. The research that's been around for 20 years tells us that it's not really 3, it's more like 2.5. And it's not really 2, it's more like 1.5. So if you do that and you take into account the fact that you have to spend some energy to move pyruvate into the mitochondria, you actually get about 30 to 32 ATP per glucose. All right. So in this class, because I trust my my biochem professor at Whitworth, we're going with this number. But I had you figure out this number just because that's what you're going to see on the tests that actually count. SAT, ACT, different things like that. So 36 to 38 ATP on SAT, ACT, AP Biology, 30 to 32 on my tests here in this class. All right, so big deal, Mr. Leo. What does that really matter? Okay, how much ATP do we use, over a whole entire day, or let's say even over a whole entire hour? Well, unfortunately, we can't really calculate that because some people use less, some people use more, some people are higher energy, some people are lower energy. But what scientists have calculated is the approximate number of ATP that one muscle cell uses, if it's operating at maximum capacity, one muscle cell uses for 1 second. And that number itself is kind of astronomical. It's 10 million. 10 million ATP molecules per second for one muscle cell operating at full capacity. Right, mind-boggling. So your little mitochondria, they are cranking out ATP just as fast as they possibly can if you're, doing something active. And even if you're just kind of sitting there, it takes energy for you to just sit there, for your heart to beat, and for your lungs your diaphragm to inhale, exhale, and for your brain to keep thinking and keep homeostasis. So our bodies are fearfully and wonderfully made. It's absolutely mind-boggling, absolutely amazing. All right, so now we are going to put this all together. So hopefully you got a piece of paper from that looks suspiciously similar to this. I'm going to do the entire page right there. So first thing I'd like you to write down is, let me move that off to the side, is the life equation, right? So go ahead, write down the life equation. Hopefully you have it memorized. I should have made you do it from memory and then wrote it down, but I'm trying to save time. And we're just going to do a very brief summary of the whole entire process of cellular respiration. So first process of cellular respiration is glycolysis. Glycolysis, perfect. And with glycolysis, right, glucose feeds into glycolysis. We add a little bit of energy, so we're going to add 2 ATP, full batteries, that give it energy, activation energy, and then become 2 ADPs. That's a D. Right? Glycolysis. So then glucose gets broken down into pyruvate. And that process, if something is broken down, something else has to be built up. So we're going to build up 4 ADP, and we're going to turn it into 4 ATP, right? And then we're also going to fill up our baskets. So we're going to fill up 2 NAD+, and let me extend the arrow a little bit, and then we're going to make 2 NADH. So that's glycolysis. This pyruvate then feeds into, it goes inside the mitochondria, remember, and it feeds into the Krebs cycle. So this is the Krebs cycle, right? This pyruvate, the carbon compound, gets broken down and leaves the Krebs cycle as CO2. Right, and then we get some energy from that too, because something is broken down, something else has to be built up. So we're going to build up we're going to take 2 ADP and we're going to build up 2 ATP, like that. Then we're going to take 8 empty baskets, NAD+, and we're going to make them into, let me extend it, 8 full baskets, NADH. And then similarly, we're going to take 2 other empty baskets, 2 FAD+, and again, extend the arrow. We're going to make it into 2, oh, that's a 2, not a 3, 2 FADH2. All right, sweet. So that's the Krebs cycle. Now, we have our ATP, but that's not nearly enough because most of our energy is stored in these baskets right here. So where do these baskets go? Well, the NADH goes to pump number 1. So this NADH and this NADH goes to pump number 1. This FADH2, right, it goes to, man, lines crossing everywhere. Goes to it goes to transport protein number 1, drops off its electrons. So when it drops off its electrons, now the full baskets become what? Yep, you're right, empty baskets. Where do those empty baskets go? Well, those empty baskets, they go back to the Krebs cycle, back to glycolysis, right? And then the FADH2 is only used in the Krebs cycle, so that goes back to the Krebs cycle. I know, I'm sorry, it's a little bit confusing, but that's okay. So what do those electrons do to the pumps? Well, they energize them, so now we have lots of hydrogen ions all over here, and hydrogen ions want to diffuse across the membrane. The only way they can is to go through ATP synthase, the most amazing protein on the planet, right? And that's going to spin, and that's going to take a DP plus some inorganic phosphate, and that's going to provide the energy to make it into a TP, just like that. And then we also have to get rid of these electrons because we can't have them clogging up the electron transport chain. So we're going to bring in some oxygen. We're going to bring in some O2, right? And that's going to pick up the electrons right here from pump 3. Pick up the electrons from pump 3, and then it's going to combine with hydrogens, and it's going to make H2O water. So last thing we need to do then is look at our life equation and find all of these things in the life equation. So glucose, C6H12O6, goes into the process, that's a reactant. Oxygen, O2, goes into the process, that's a reactant. And then CO2 comes out of the process, that's a product. H2O comes out of the process, that's a product. And then energy, ATP, comes out of the process, that's a product. So this has been Mr. Leo. This video we have looked at a very, very broad overview of the whole entire process of cellular respiration. We calculated the totals and then we filled in this diagram. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you on the flip side.